Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Attractions Group podcast. I'm Don Helbig, along with Ryan Sir. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Ryan, I've been looking at your social media posts the past few days, and notice you've been going to a lot of like theater plays. So, what have you seen lately?
I enjoy going. It's me and my girlfriend. That's kind of our night out. We go about once a month or so. So we've seen a lot. Um, recently, God, we've seen a lot recently. Normally, we don't go this often, really, but in the last month or so, we've seen Anastasia, Annie, and Les Miserables. I'm sure you're gonna ask which one's my favorite. Les Miserables is my favorite because it's got.
Yeah, I like that one too, Ryan. And I heard Annie was pretty good.
It was good. It was the kids were adorable and incredibly talented, and we were in the very front row. She got me that for my birthday, so we were all the way on the right side, so stage left in the very front row. So kind of like with this, it's no exception to like what I kind of talk about with the theme park
Right.
stuff, where I'm really kind of more concerned with how things work and why they do it the way they do it than what's actually going on stage in a lot of instances. So to be able to sit there and look down on the orchestra pit and watch them work and how they operate was super interesting. But it was really cool. So we've seen a lot. I've got in a couple weeks I'm going to Columbus to see Beetlejuice, which is one I've really looked forward to. So that's more of an
Hmm.
adult oriented kind of R-rated one with a couple of F bombs and stuff. So that's modern theater for you. How have you been?
I've been doing well. Just had a chance to watch all the XFL football games this past weekend, to see how that league was doing. It was great to see former Bengal AJ McCarron,
Mm-hmm.
rally his team in the fourth quarter. That's what AJ does. And just, happy that he's getting a chance to just play football, and hopefully it works his way back into the NFL.
Yeah, awesome. Well, so we're at the top of the show, so let's remind everyone that if you, well, first of all, thank you for being here, of course. If you're watching our video version, then thank you. If you prefer the audio version, then you can check us out on any of your favorite podcast apps. If you want to do the video, which is a lot more fun because you can see our smiling faces, then search on YouTube for the Attractions Group Podcast. Also, follow us on Twitter at attractions_GRP. Now, we do have a special guest today, but I want to show something off before we get started. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Perfect. Okay. So we had Chris Roberry on from the National Roller Coaster Museum, and he was kind of talking about some of the stuff that they have in their merch store. And I started talking to him on the side about different things and like different ideas. And so I started
Hmm.
going through, and I was like, there's a lot of cool stuff. So I did end up spending some of my hard earned money at the National Roller Coaster Museum's online store. So this is really cool. We discussed this on the show. This is a 3D printed Schwarzkopf logo. So Schwarzkopf obviously is a classic roller coaster manufacturer. This is made out of plastic, but it's really kind of cool. He mentioned that some people want to stick it on their car, so it looks like it's like a Schwarzkopf brand car or Schwarzkopf model car. So that's really neat. But here's the one that's probably a little bit more widely appealing. I got this. See this here, this poster. I know for you audio listeners, you're kind of missing out here, but um, this is actually like on a really thick kind of a Bristol board. So I'm really happy with the quality. You can see Big Bad Wolf down here that I never got to
Hmm.
ride, and I think it's not Matterhorn. What not Space Mountain. Which one is this at Disneyland? He said they have the car.
It's hard for me to see on
I'm
your
so sorry. It's two-seater.
poster there, but
Okay, but anyway, we got.
I want to say Matterhorn. I want to say maybe it is
And then
Matterhorn
they
there,
got
is based
Old
what I can
Texas
tell.
Giant, and then this is something else. This may be just some sort of generic thing, but really really cool. So check out the National Roller Coaster Museums for some really really cool objects. And he actually showed me some stuff of like they've got like a National Amusement device, like a generic National Amusement device train that's made out of that balsa wood. So that's kind of cool too. Don, what do we got going on today?
I checked out the store
Yeah.
too, after we had Chris on, and some things I wanna buy, but, have to wait until, after July. I have a daughter that's getting married, so all my extra cash right now is going, to pay for that wedding. But, we have a special guest tonight, as you mentioned, coaster101.com. It's your online destination for all of the ins and outs and twists and turns of roller coasters and the amusement industry. And joining us is one of the team members at Coaster 101, Andrew Stillwell. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Ryan, Don, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to a great evening of chatting for sure.
Now, if you guys want to sign a maturity, As we pointed out before we started recording, Andrew's the first person to show up to the show as a guest wearing the proper attire, wearing a nice, not exactly Hawaiian shirt, but definitely tropical looking. So thank you. It's kind of like when the 5-year-old kid takes a bath without having to be asked, and you're just so proud of them. So thank you so much for your compliance, Andrew.
Absolutely. You can thank past guest Chris Roberry, because I was listening to the episode with him fairly recently. I know I believe he changed mid-show into his Hawaiian shirt, but I decided, to save everybody the effort of me changing live on a podcast. I'm just gonna, bring the closest thing I have to a Hawaiian shirt, which is kind of this Bird of Paradise
Hey,
print.
I think that they would
shirt.
accept you as one of their own in Hawaii. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about Coaster 101. So great website. A lot of times, when I'm looking for like Pick Six articles and stuff, essentially, a little behind the scenes. I don't think this is too big of a secret, but I search for theme park news. Coaster 101 often comes up with its articles. So how did it get started, and how did you get involved in the team?
Yeah, so back in 2005, pre YouTube, there was this guy, John Stevenson, who I believe was 11 or 12 years old at the time, 12, 13, something like. He's a teenager living in his parents' house, and he was like a lot of kids in our generation in this fandom, had an interest in roller coasters, and he kind of created this website all the way back in 05. And just over the years, it's kind of continued to grow. We've added members to the team. But, like you guys mentioned, it is kind of that the ins and outs, twists and turns of roller coasters in the amusement industry. And, when I describe it to people, I try to say we do a lot of words that end in EWS. So we do news, reviews, interviews, other words, other things, that don't end in EWS. But we try to cover a big portion of the industry itself, big industry news. We're not necessarily regurgitating every press release out there, but we are trying to come up with our own unique content, and it's more of the written word and pictures, kind of that old school mentality. We're trying to get a little bit more into video right now, but we're also in our, most of us are in our early 30s, late 30s, and we're trying to adapt slowly but surely. It's not really happening that well, but we're getting there. And then how I got involved, actually it's going to be 10 years ago this October, which seems unreal at this point. But Coaster 101 had a photo contest on Twitter, and I was, I had followed them on, I think I saw it on Screamscape, followed them on Twitter. They had this photo contest, which I ended up winning in the mobile photo category with this photo of Loch Ness Monster that I think was taken on like a TI-83 Plus calculator. It was just not the world's greatest quality, but somehow I won, and it was cool, got my prize back, but I stayed following Coaster 101, and they were looking for writers. And I was a creative writing minor in college, and had always had this interest in theme parks. I grew up in South Florida, where Orlando was a day trip for us. So we went up and down a fair amount as a kid. And then I moved to North Carolina right about the time I kind of caught that coaster bug. So I'd always had this interest in the industry, always really enjoyed writing. And I saw this as a way to kind of have that creative outlet and kind of marry the two passions together. And so I sent them an application, writing sample, things like that. They took me under their wing, and then the rest is rock and roll history. I mean, we have kind of, again, continued to grow the site. It was, I have the traffic numbers from that first, 3 months in 2013 that I wrote, October, November, December. And then there are, literal months in the past years that, double and triple the total traffic of those 3 months in 2013. So right place, right time, but it's one of what I call my passion projects, and it's just a blast. And we've grown the team to, I believe, 8 people now, and we're kind of all over the place. But yeah, that's the the quick version, I think, and I feel like I rambled a ton there, but that is the quick version.
Right. Andrew, I find Coaster 101 to be one of the most well-rounded industry websites out there. Just a lot of great content out there. And like I said, it's all over the map on what you cover. But if you're someone and you go to your website, how often would they go to your website and find new content? Is it something like every day there's something new published, or once a week?
It really depends. In the past, it's been, I will say, a lot busier on our site, and we try. It is a side project, passion project for all 8 of us. I mean, there is not like a steady income. We do this because we enjoy being able to communicate about the industry and write and kind of flex that creative muscle a little bit. We try to keep it updated. As news comes out, we shoot for 5 to 7 articles a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. But it really depends kind of on the news cycle. Obviously, there are days, as Six Flags or Cedar Fair has their big announcement day in the fall, or Cedar Fair does, Six Flags used to. You'll see 8 or 9 pieces of content just go up on the site in one day, because every article has its own story and all things like that. But in times like this, we're in mid-February to kind of date this. Some of the parks are open. Most of the parks have made their announcements for 2023. We try to focus a lot on interviews and things like that, but it comes down to, really for us, time. And we're all traveling, but at the same time, we, as I mentioned, are most of us adults in our 30s. We have families. I have a fiance. I know several of the other guys have wives and kids. And then we're trying to get out there, but it is sometimes it's more difficult than others. And I know you guys probably live that life a little bit, maybe with this podcast. I don't know. Seems like you got a pretty good recording schedule down, but it really comes down to when we have time and what happens to be new at that any given time.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, I completely empathize with you. I don't know if you know this or not, but the way that I got involved was I ran KICentral.com for 20 years or so. So the theme park / life balance thing is always something. I think I dedicated probably 30 hours a week to it at most, on top of working and going to college for a lot of that time. But I wouldn't give it up for anything, because I learned so much from it. I'm a marketing guy, and I think that I learned more from doing that than I did from going to school and getting a degree in marketing. By the way, I finally got my diploma framed. For those of you, okay, that was sitting in an envelope in my closet for 15 years or whatever. And I finally got a frame for it the other day. So go me, I'm finally a grad. But yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. And I can attest, like this, it's so much work, but you've got to be so dedicated to it. But that being said, though, you do have a lot of really, really good content, and you interview a lot of people from within the industry. Let's talk about some of the most recent ones you did. Who are some of the industry people that that you've interviewed recently that you're most proud of, and articles that you would want people directed to?
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think there's kind of a twofold answer to this question, because obviously, in addition to coaster101.com, the website with the written word, mid-pandemic, we got tired of baking bread, and we have our own podcast now. So a lot more of the interviews recently have been on our podcast, and kind of bringing people from the industry, outside of the industry, just a different audio medium, and a different content medium, if you will. But I can think of recently, just on the podcast this past week, and a cheap plug for the Coaster 101 podcast, if I'm allowed to advertise my podcast on another podcast. Sorry. I will pay for this sponsored content airtime, I promise. But I actually was able to interview my cousin, Abby Bish, who is the Chief Strategy and Development Officer. Chief Experience and Strategy Officer at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, and that is the world premiere location for the Disney 100 exhibition, the museum exhibition that they're doing to celebrate the 100th anniversary. So I got to talk to her, which is really cool. But I think just there are people in this industry, and with as many connections as I've made over the past 10 years at this point, there are people who I really enjoy talking to in the industry. People like Adam Sandy with Zamperla. He's been on our podcast a couple of times. Don has actually been on our podcast. We talked Coaster Stock a couple of years ago. But yeah, Dave Cobb is another one who comes to mind, and this was one of our earlier podcast episodes. But Dave was the creative director for Men in Black: Alien Attack at Universal Orlando, and it was the only interview I've ever done that we had to break into two separate shows because we sat there for 3 hours and just shot the stuff. And just had a great time just talking about his career in the industry, which is obviously far more than Men in Black. But that's one of my favorite dark rides of all time, and I got to just geek out with the guy who created it. And we're sitting there and we're talking. This was around the ride's 20th anniversary, in between the 20th and 21st birthday. And so we're talking about if there were to be a Men in Black cocktail to celebrate the ride's 21st birthday, being that it can legally drink at that point, what would that cocktail be? And so we're just, coming up with things like that. That's an interview that will always stick out to me. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if there's anybody else that really sticks out. And right now they're not coming to me, but I will probably have a eureka moment here in about 15 minutes and be like, oh, I also interviewed so-and-so. So keep you on your toes there. But yeah, I think one of my favorite things about Coaster 101 is getting to talk to people in and out of the industry and just kind of tell their stories, tell the stories of their companies and the projects they worked on and things like that. It's just everybody has a story, and it's really fun getting to be the person to tell them.
To clarify, I believe David Cobb also was chief of design for Paramount Parks as well. I think he did Italian Job Stunt Track, maybe Tomb Raider. I'm not sure if he was there for that, but he was there in the kind of the late Paramount era. And I think he's an independent designer now.
That's correct.
He probably has his own thing going now, right?
He is, I believe he's, as far as I know, he's not as much in the industry proper anymore. I know he's working on some kind of different entertainment options. I don't think that's really my news to tell, but if you dig deep enough on LinkedIn, you'll find a lot of good things.
Yeah, Andrew, to have the kind of content that you're able to produce on Coaster 101 with these interviews and some of the behind the scenes type things, different events that parks are doing, you have to have great relationships with a lot of people in the industry. How did Coaster 101, or how do you go about cultivating a lot of those relationships so you're able to provide that kind of content?
I am a lot like both you and Ryan Don. I come from a kind of a marketing communications background. That is my full-time role, is I'm in communications. Obviously grew up in marketing, and the way I was able to cultivate these relationships is I built a level of trust. I can have conversations with people in the industry, and I can be like, listen, you don't have to worry about me leaking news. I'm not going to go on Reddit or Twitter or say, whatever. I'm here, and Coaster 101 is here. And I mean, obviously we try to be as much like media, true media, actual, print journalism, not somebody with a YouTube channel who thinks they're media. That's another conversation.
We do a whole podcast on that, couldn't we?
Yes, and I think you guys did kind of early on. I feel like it was the relationships with parks episode 7, maybe. I don't know. It's somewhere early in the catalog, and I really
it was an episode involving influencer marketing. And Don kind of gave, especially from his position within his experience within the industry, kind of the parks perspective, because that's the beauty of my dynamic with Don, is because I was involved before the influencer thing, but I was on the outside looking in while Don was on the inside, trying to find where he can leverage the outside. So that we worked together very well for a decade, and now we're doing this. But yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, and I'll add to what Ryan was talking
Yeah.
about too. Me being on the inside, I was on the outside for a long time too, and I was able to build up that trust with a number of parks, and they would share with me things they were doing. Now, this was before social media really came about and YouTube and all that, but it's really important that they know that you're not going to leak a lot of things. You're going to keep things confidential until the right time, and I can tell you, you mentioned Coaster 101, and it's got a great deal of respect throughout the industry. And I think it really is a tribute to the way that you and your, the team there at Coaster 101 has gone about it.
Yeah, I think again for me, and it's about the professionalism that we try to kind of carry ourselves with. We treat this again, albeit not like a paying job, but we treat it like a real job. And a lot of these parks, I kind of I give them the line, which isn't really a line, but it's kind of a philosophy. It's we exist in the business of everything is supposed to be fun. We're never going to be hypercritical, but we're there to help be an extension of a park's marketing communications. If a park wants to talk about a food festival, we will go to that food festival. We will eat the food. We'll tell you how it is. Or a park brings out a new ride, we will go, we will give you the honest story. I mean, I think back to, several years ago at Carowinds, they had this ambassador blogger program that Chris Foshi, who was the digital marketing manager at the time, he was kind of trying to get off the ground. And Chris and I, we never really interacted very much prior to this blogger program. And I had started at Coaster 101 right before Fury kind of went through its construction announcement, all that. That was the first ride I really got to cover from announcement to Media Day. And, I was at Media Day. The first ride, for whatever reason, I got walked on Media Day, and it was able to ride later, but it was just really, I said, my legs are larger. I'm not faulting the park for this, but Chris he's creating this ambassador blogger program, and I joke about this with him. But he picked 9 what I'm going to call mom bloggers, and they write things like, "Hey, make sure you go to the Chick-fil-A inside the park." And again, nothing against Chick-fil-A inside the park. I think there are better options. Again, another topic.
I don't think that is an option there
sure.
anymore.
It's not. So I rest my case. But I was the only amusement park that, Carowinds at that time was kind of working with as this blogger program. And I took that as a little bit of a badge of honor. So I was going to work hard for, that process. And I knew there's a ton of people on the internet who do, or try to do what we do. And there are a few who do it very well. And then there are others who are in it for the stuff, and they're in it for the access, and they're in it for the tours and the ERT and all this other stuff. For me, it's about relationship building. And, I built that relationship with Chris, and it kind of extended to other people in the Cedar Fair chain at the point. And to me, it's all about the relationship building, because without the relationships, you don't have any of this. You don't get to tell the stories. And if you get a bit of access because you're professional and have proven yourself to kind of have this level of professionalism that you won't leak, and you're not going to be, pardon the expression, you're not going to be a jackass when you're in the park. I think that goes a long way with a lot of these parks, because every day there's somebody new who thinks, oh, I can do this. Oh, let me start a website. Let me start an Instagram. Let me start a YouTube channel, because that's how I'm going to get invited to media events. And fortunately, we've built up this reputation over the past 18 years now, that we're going to provide, again, fair coverage. thorough coverage. And, some of our best work is we've got the Coasters 101 series on our website that is written by guys with engineering backgrounds who understand CAD software, who understand the physics, who understand kind of what go into this. And I know there are like educators who use this information in their classroom. So we're not just your run of the mill blogger. We're never going to hit you with clickbait. We're never going to tweet things. And, I'm not going to name websites. You guys, if you're listening to this podcast, you know who the aggregators of clickbait in the industry are. We're going to try our best to, give you the best content, cover the parks in a timely, fair manner. And, we're going to have some fun with it along the way. But I think, again, none of this happens without trying to build relationships at the parks to, again, maybe get a half step up on somebody else who doesn't have that relationship.
Yeah. I feel like you and I need to get a beer sometime because you're telling my story. You're just about 7 years behind what I did before before I took my exit. And by the way, left KI Central because I was involved in my own LLC, which was consulting in the industry, and somebody within the industry said that they were uncomfortable with that, and I kind of took that as a sign. So still love them, still contribute, still consult with them all the time. But yeah, you make some interesting points. And it's probably more prevalent now on like the Facebook groups than it is with the websites, because I do remember, and Don, you have to remember this, is, we had our thing going and then we were massive, just huge. And, it wasn't every day that, somebody from the news is calling for quotes and stuff like that. But every 3 months or so, somebody would spring up with a different like offshoot variation that was half built, and it's like, we do what they do, so we're gonna go to media day too or whatever. But one thing that you have to understand, and I'm sure that, well, Don, you probably understand it from your perspective, but Andrew, that you definitely get this now, is that when it comes to things like, let's say, Haunt Media Day or a New Rides Media Day, it becomes less of, oh, I get to ride this ride one day before everybody else. The journalistic spirit kind of kicks in, and it's more like, I need this time to do my job. I need to be able to go through all 8 haunted houses so I can write about it and I can speak to it and things of that sort. So, yeah, totally understand where you're coming from. But when it comes down to it, time is on your side. That's usually a good thing. Unfortunately, there are certain things like, especially like YouTube channels, where they have a good thing going, they start adding to their staff, and then people ruin it for them, and then the reputation's gone. And then what happens next is questionable, but that's why always have a really good filter between who works for you and who doesn't. That's life advice if there ever was one. So, when we talk about, websites and stuff like that, I remember one of the things that I always considered a threat was when entities started coming onto social media like Facebook. So not only did people have Facebooks, but parks had Facebooks, and there were groups and stuff like that. So really had to leverage that in order to drive traffic to the website. What are your strategies for using social media to drive people to coaster101.com specifically?
Yeah, I think it's important for us. Anytime an article posts on our website, it hits Facebook and Twitter through Hootsuite or something like that. John manages a lot of the back end automation on that. But I do know, if there's an important article, I'm going to use several years ago. It was this month that King's Dominion announced the closure of Volcano, and they did it by burying it at the bottom of a blog, which it was there, and I saw it, kind of come across Twitter, and I was like, I should probably write about this because nobody's really talking about it. And that was one of our busiest site days of all time for years, was just because, we put it out there. We didn't editorialize. We said, King's Dominion has announced they're closing Volcano. Here's some background on Volcano. For more information, check out the blog. Here's a picture of Volcano. And we tweeted that out, and it kind of as social media does from time to time, however the algorithm decides to work with or against you, that one just kind of caught fire. And, you know, but to me, it's like we always, Facebook and Twitter are always, there's going to be content that comes from there. And Facebook is one of our biggest aggregators of traffic, or causes for traffic. Aggregators isn't the right word, but we get a lot of our traffic on social media from Facebook, and we are constantly pushing out articles that aren't necessarily as current, but we're kind of resharing articles that are maybe a little bit more evergreen. During COVID, for example, when there was next to no news, I went on RCDB and I curated these lists of fastest coaster in each state or longest coaster by each letter of the alphabet. Lists that people could find if they really cared, but it's this type of stuff like that that really does gangbusters in a time where there might not be as much fresh and exciting news and things to cover. So I think the constant sharing of both new and old articles is a good way to drive traffic to the website. But I also think it's important for our social media, and I can speak a lot to Twitter because that's one of my favorite social media platforms. It's important for the social media to kind of have a little bit of personality of its own. And I think giving a brand a voice, as it relates to Coaster 101, we can talk about roller coasters. We can talk about the people who considered certain roller coasters when they added a couple more feet to be a brand new credit. Um, Don,
Oh
you know what
yeah.
I'm talking about, but so but we can just kind of we can have fun with people. We can again just be ourselves a little bit, and I think a lot of people have their personal Twitter and their job Twitter or whatever. And to me, the Coaster 101 Twitter account is kind of my looking glass into fans of the industry and the industry itself. We build up a really good rapport with several parks on social media, and it's kind of, it ebbs and flows depending on the whoever's writing the content for a park at a specific time. And I know there's been really good social media managers in the past who have kind of they've been willing to play along a little bit, and I don't want to name names because I'll obviously forget somebody, but if you're listening to this and you know who I am, I know who you are, and that's how it's going to work. But they would play along, and you build this rapport, and somebody like Dorney Park, for example, I don't know who's running their social media right now, but they're having fun with it, which is great. And for a park like Dorney that isn't getting a new coaster every year or every other year or every 10, 15 years or whatever you happen to believe on the internet from the local proceedings. And I swear nobody can manage local government websites better than Coaster Enthusiast. I'm like trying to click in and find these meeting minutes and things, and they're like, boom, here it is. It's on Reddit. It was on Reddit half an hour ago.
Yep.
Whatever. But I think it's important to have that personality. And without the personality, you're just somebody who kind of, again, just aggregates links. And you've got to give people a reason. If they're not super interested in roller coasters, they can come to you for a witty pun or a dumb joke or something like that in the same time.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you that Twitter is my favorite social media channel again because you can have more fun with it. I think it's more interesting, to see the different thing. I also like that it's more immediate. If there's different breaking news,
Yes.
whether it's sports, theme parks, whatever that I'm interested in, it's right there, and I see it come up. Where Facebook, I'll see articles come up that I would have liked to have known about 3 days ago when it came out, but the way the algorithm works, it didn't pop into my feed until it was after the fact. So definitely Twitter. It's interesting with my Twitter. I have people that follow me because of they want to know about theme parks and stuff. I have people that follow me because they like that I post about hockey, or other ones maybe because of Bucky's. But then I get the ones that if I'm tweeting about hockey, the theme park fans that follow me are like, why aren't you tweeting about theme parks? If I tweet about theme parks, the hockey fans are like, we need more. We want to see more hockey stuff from you. So it's fun to play with them that way too, and kind of balance. But you're right, you can have more personality, a lot more fun, and I really love it when parks don't take themselves too serious on channels like Twitter.
100%. And another one I mentioned,
Yeah.
Dorney Park. Don, you and I both know Kyle, who's at
Mhm.
King's Dominion now, and he's taking those channels and he's putting his personality into it, which I am loving. And it is, it's always fun to kind of interact with the parks, especially when you know the people kind of on the other end of the keys. That's always fun for
Yeah,
me.
and he's doing a great job there. You're right. Definitely has added some personality to that. Dorney Park doing a great job with it. But back to Coaster 101 here. You have opportunities for people to join your team as writers.
We
What are
do.
you looking for? If someone wants to write for you, I mean, what do they need to bring to the table to be considered for the team?
I think they need a passion, and we are kind of like Ryan was saying, we're particular about who we kind of bring on to kind of join our team. Obviously, geographic location is important. If you're in an area that we are not, that is a benefit to us. And I'm in North Carolina, kind of cover North Carolina, Virginia, and anywhere else really. We have a guy who's typically in New England, but he's down in Orlando now at the Disney College program. John, who runs the site, is in Nashville. We've got a couple of guys in Ohio. Nick, who does a little bit more writing, and Kyle, who does a lot of our graphic design and graphic work. We've got Eric out in California, and we've got Mike the Central Florida, not really Orlando, but he's close enough to the parks. But he also, has a wife and 2 kids. And then we've got Larry up in Michigan, who's got a job he's super busy with. So it is we look obviously for writing quality. We don't really want to have to edit your work. You come at it with a way that's entertaining, kind of fit our writing style, that is, again, informative, entertaining, things like that. If you're in a geographic area, but really what it comes down to is the passion. All of us, again, we don't write for a theme park blog because we want to get rich. And I mean, we're not in the YouTube where we can, fund ourselves and have YouTube be our full-time job. I mean, all 8 of us are in a situation where our full-time job is not theme park related. Except, I mean, Shane right now is doing the Disney College program, but he is working at the park, but I don't know if that's what he's going to do the rest of his life. So it is having that passion and being willing to kind of, learn, enjoy the industry, and not come at it from like we're not never going to be the people, like I mentioned, who are leaking the blueprints or, taking whatever these other websites do. Again, I'm not naming names, but leaking blueprints or leaking plans years and years in advance. We're never going to do that. And we're all fans of the industry. We know this stuff goes on, but that's why we have a private writer Facebook group where we can say, hey, don't put this on the website because, we respect the park and we kind of want to work with the marketing departments on this. And then at the end of the day, you've got to be able to kind of mesh well with the 8 of us. And that's really what it comes down to. The way it was put to us one time, and I love this quote, and then the person deleted it right off of social media. Several years ago, we did a writer meetup at Six Flags Over Texas, or not Six Flags Great America. It was going to be Six Flags Over Texas the following year, and then COVID happened and ruined everything. But we put a group photo of the 7 of us at the time. This was before Shane joined. Next to one of the postcard signs at Six Flags Great America that said Six Flags, and it was the first time that all 7 of us had been together and ridden roller coaster at the same time. Really cool. Again, being kind of remote as we are, but the person on Facebook who commented this and then really quickly deleted it said, looks like a really normal group of guys, a rarity in the coaster community, I'd guess, or I'd say. And we, to this day, we find that just hilarious. But at its core, we're not the most hardcore coaster enthusiasts. Again, we all love the industry. We love riding roller coasters. We love traveling around. But we're not going to just be like other I don't want to, again, talk bad about enthusiasts because I really enjoyed the episode you guys had with Elizabeth and Ace, but there are, certain enthusiasts out there who have kind of a stigma, I think is the unfair way to put it, but they act a certain way and they react a certain way when things happen. But for the most part, the 8 of us are all just really easygoing, and we're fanatical, but we're casual in our fandom, if that makes sense. We know, but we're never going to be the loudest person in the room to tell you that you're right or wrong. And, again, writing, location, ability to kind of mesh with us, and passion for it. I know this is a long, rambling answer, but that I could have answered in 5 words. But, yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to.
Andrew, I like the people that will choose to use 720 words when 5 will do.
Yes, that's the purpose of this podcast. We're not going to talk for 5 minutes because then I'm a really, really.
But then again,
guest.
Don's the guy who infamously once said, "Why make billions when you can make millions?" Okay, that didn't land. Anyway, so what we talked about how you don't want to be the people that that leak blueprints and whatever, but I can speak from experience. So can anybody else that's kind of theme park adjacent, shall we say, where sometimes you do come across privy information. Where do you draw the line as far as not upsetting the park with releasing information, but at the same time getting your readers the best possible, most up-to-date information as early as possible?
I think the best and most accurate information is going to come from the park itself, and I'm not just saying this because I'm looking at Don and the other camera lens, and he's kind of in that role. But again, I think we exist in a way where if we can work with the park, it's going to be better for all involved. And I mean, so we'll draw that line. I mean, we can say things like, I'll go back to when Copperhead Strike was being built at Carowinds, and everyone saw the crate in the parking lot that said mock rides on it. Meanwhile, we're in the middle of a weeks long analyzing every teaser that they're putting out, with a general idea, because we know where to find the stuff just like everybody else does. And if there's blueprints out there, somebody's got them. So if you look at it, but you can play along. There's no harm in playing along. And again, if people really want that information, it's out there. And I'm not, this is me talking personally, and again, not talking bad about anybody else who does this, because everybody has their own kind of niche when it comes to this level of content. But we're never going to be those people, and we don't have to be those people. People come to Coaster 101 because of the coverage we provide, not necessarily the coverage we don't provide, if that makes sense. I just think that, again, if people want to find that information, they can find it. They can learn how to decipher the Pennsylvania County Government Planning Commission website and understand blueprints. I don't understand these things. I look at it from a marketing communications background, and I want to say, okay, here's this thing that's going to happen. What are they going to do with it? And I enjoy the journey more than instantaneous information.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense there. Andrew, you have a lot of great content on your site. You have a pretty good following. Does Coaster 101 ever do any kind of things like meetups and that at different parks?
We do with our writers, and again, the 8 of us, we're all pretty tight. We connect on a monthly basis on a Zoom or a Teams call. I will say the good thing about Coaster 101 is we have this following, but we don't have like an identity, like a recognizable face. Like somebody like a Taylor Bybee, for example. Again, past guest of the show, does really good work. But, when Taylor's at a park, people know Taylor's there. People are going to go up and talk to him. Same with Sarah. Same with, a lot of people. The thing about Coaster 101 is most of us just don't put our face out there. And, we'll wear a Coaster 101 shirt at a park. We've had people come up to us in the past, but we don't need that level of attention. Like, if you want to hang out with us, great. And if you want to come to a park with us, great. I mean, we kind of, if we're at a park, we'll usually, 9 times out of 10 tweet and Instagram and Facebook and stuff through the day. So you'll know we're there, but it's not like I don't think we have this rabid fan base that a lot of other personalities have. I know there are, again, that's the Don, if you're out in Kings Island, people are coming up to you. They're like, hey, we want to hang out. And I'm one of those people because, like, that's what I would want to do. But I don't have that level of fandom, or people don't have that level of fandom for us. There's the handful of people who I know listen to every podcast episode and like everything we put on Twitter. And we appreciate that. But at the same time, it's not like they're saying, hey, where can we buy your bathwater or something like that. I mean, it's like, that's a terrible, terrible, terrible joke. But like that, we don't have that level of like rabid fandom. So we've there are other organizations who, do meetups and things like that. And, more likely than that, we're more likely to kind of jump into a Coaster Stock or a Coaster Mania or some other event that a park or an enthusiast group puts on, and we'll show up at that. But we haven't really done anything that's like a meetup centered around us. I know the guys from Coaster Radio, they do a really good, they've been on the air as long as we've been a website, and they have a really fanatical, rabid fan base and things like that. They do a great job, and they have their meetups, and a bunch of people show up, have a good time. I just don't think we're there yet as having the face and identity and the diehard fandom that would like necessitate it. Because the last thing you want to do is say, hey, Coaster 101 is going to have a meetup at Carowinds, and the only person who shows up is me. And that's just embarrassing.
Sounds like my 8th birthday. Awesome.
All right. Well, Andrew, we appreciate having you on the podcast. We'd love to have you stick around for our next segment that we do. It's called the Pick Six. But before we get to that, tell everybody where they can find Coaster 101 on the different channels.
Yeah, we are at Coaster 101 pretty much anywhere you can consume social media. So that's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Like I said, we're not great at video. We're trying to be better. But again, all of those social channels, it's Coaster. And if you can't spell Coaster at this point listening to the podcast, I question it. And then the number 1, the number 0, and then the number 1. Also, the website coaster101.com. Again, spelled the same way, COASTER 101.com. And again, another cheap plug for the very creatively named The Coaster 101 podcast. Comes out mostly on Mondays, but sometimes on Tuesdays. It depends on when I get to edit it. Available anywhere you listen to the Attractions Group podcast, but not on YouTube because, again, we just kind of hide our face sometimes.
There's a podcast I listen to about cell phones because I'm a nerd, and I listen to a podcast about cell phones where they do a YouTube version, but half of them have the camera off. Is that weird, or is that just me?
One of my favorite podcasts is 2 comedians reviewing chain restaurants. So I don't watch the video version. I think they've started doing that, but it's like, I love just weird, goofy content like that. The cell phone podcast, I don't know if I could get behind, but you guys, do you prefer to listen? I don't really want to hijack your show by taking this off the rails or anything, but do you prefer, if you're consuming a podcast, do you prefer to listen to it or do you prefer to watch it?
Well, for me, I prefer to listen to it because it's often going to be when I'm driving somewhere, especially like a long distance. If I'm going from, Cincinnati to Tennessee, I'm certainly gonna listen to it. But depending on what the show's about, I certainly like the ability to watch a video of it.
Yeah, so I would say that I'm kind of 50-50. So if you're looking for your particular podcast, like if you're thinking that you might be missing out by not doing YouTube, that's a possibility. I will tell you that for my personal preference, some of the podcasts I listen to, I actually sometimes I listen on Apple Podcasts and sometimes on YouTube because I'll watch it. But I also listen to YouTube in the car pretty often, so it's tantamount to it. The reason why we specifically decided to do the video thing is because we plan to do more stuff like this in the future, more videos, and this is kind of more of just a jumping off point. So we figured we would take the pain point early on. Although watching the YouTube video has gotten better over time with my ability to edit and us being able to cut cameras and all sorts of stuff like that. But I think that if you plan on adding theatrics to it, then YouTube would probably be a good route to go eventually. The cool part is though is if you've got podcast listeners, you can always transition them into YouTube listeners as well because you've got a grounds to plug it. We started from zero on all accounts, but yeah. So anyway, no, you're
Right.
you're totally fine. So obviously the next segment is one that's very interesting, and it's going to be particularly pertaining to you because this involves the news of the day when it comes to theme parks. But before we get started, a lot of people have been asking us how they can support the show. They've been asking if we have a Patreon and stuff. We do not have a Patreon. We may do something along those lines in the future, but what we do have is we've got an account at what they call buymeacoffee.com, where if you want to, you can throw us a couple bucks to help support the show. You don't have to do that. I'm not asking you to do that. Some people have asked how they can support the show. That's a way to do it if you want to. No pressure, no hard feelings if you don't. Totally cool. But anyway, without further ado, it's time for the Pick Six. Okay. All right. So the first story of the day is from Knoebels. Golden Ticket Award in many accounts, but they're adding a. Now, I might get the pronunciation wrong because I always thought this was called a Bavarian curve for the longest time, but it's a Byron curve. Is that correct? Andrew, do you know?
I think it's a Bayern, like Bayern Munich, like
Yeah,
a
Bayern.
Bayern
Bayern.
curve.
Okay, Bayern. Words are hard, I have to admit. But anyway, so yeah, they're adding a Bayern curve, which is a high-speed flat ride that kind of seems like a coaster. It's like a circular kind of deal. Um, but looking at their announcement, it's a 32 passenger ride that can reach a top speed of 70 miles an hour, which is just incredible for what you're looking at. This ride was originally manufactured in 1963. And there are only 3 operating in existence. Don, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm real excited about it. Kings Island had that attraction, when the park first, came in a couple years later, but it had that for a number of years there. One of my favorite rides. I think it is the perfect fit for Knoebels because they have all those, classic, amusement park rides. So I think it's a great fit for them. I think it's going to be very popular.
Andrew, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I was doing a little research on the Byron curve, and apparently, according to Wikipedia, um, the last one to open that has a known opening date was like 1994 at Kennywood, and that one recently closed in 2020. But this is it's not an attraction that you see very often, and this is. And again, I'm seeing the Wikipedia here. This one is apparently a hybrid of 2 former attractions. One was at Fun Spot in Angola, Indiana, and the other was a Swiss Bob from Amusements of America, which is a similar attraction. I think this is going to fit Knoebels perfectly, and I rode the one at Kennywood several years ago before it was removed in 2020, and I have a hot take here. This is amongst the coaster credit counting individuals. This could be a coaster credit if you really, really were a diehard. I want everything to be a coaster credit because I believe there is a period of time where it does coast. And if you're counting the Skyline attractions, I told you there would be somebody who I would forget that we interviewed in the past. The guys from Skyline are great. I know you've had them on your show as well. But if the Skyline Skywarps can be considered a roller coaster, I feel like the Byron Curve is just as much of a roller coaster. But again, another topic for another day as to what is a coaster credit and what's not. But I've never actually been to Knoebels. It's one of my really embarrassing theme park blind spots, and I don't know if this is the reason that I will go up there. Obviously, the food and the coaster lineup and all that other good stuff will kind of outweigh this. But I'm excited because the rides are just fun, and I don't really like rides that go around in a circle. But Bayern Curve they're very fun attractions.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Right, number two is Peppa Pig theme park. It's celebrating its first birthday celebration. Andrew, what are your thoughts on that?
I am not the target demographic for this theme park. I am a childless 33-year-old, and I'm very excited that this park has made it a year down in Central Florida, where it is very difficult to have a lot of staying power unless your name is Disney, Universal, or SeaWorld or FunSpot. And I know it's not in Orlando proper. What I really want to do is go down there, and I tried to go during my most recent Orlando trip a couple weeks ago, and my younger brother, who he tolerates my coaster enthusiasm for a little bit, he's like, I'm not going to Peppa Pig theme park so you can ride one roller coaster and leave. And Daddy Pig's roller coaster, again, it almost won an award for best new ride of 2021, 2022, whenever 2022, because that would be 1 year. So I'm really excited that, Zampero's coaster division is continuing to kick off. But the 7 or 8 attractions here, I don't think I would personally ride or fit on any of them as a childless adult. And I'm wondering even if they would, let me in the park just to ride Daddy Pig and leave. But again, I'm happy for them, and I think this micro park is a really good kind of experiment and case study to these micro and smaller amusement parks that are starting to pop up around the country. But congratulations to them for making it a year. Just next time, A, put it a little bit closer to Orlando, and B, give it an IP that doesn't make me look creepy when I say, "Hey, can I ride the Daddy Pig coaster?"
Yeah, maybe.
If you got young kids, though, it's
So
that's true.
It's a lot of fun if you got young kids, I'm sure.
My understanding is that this is
Absolutely.
adjacent to Legoland. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
That is
Okay,
correct.
so it
Yes.
is pretty far from Orlando, but I mean, Legoland didn't really choose its own location because that was Cypress Gardens, which was really
Cypress
cool.
Gardens. Yep.
So I had to Google what Peppa Pig was when I first heard about this a couple months ago. It was probably a year ago when it opened, actually. So it's child's IP from, I believe, the United Kingdom. My nephew is about 2, and he makes this grunting noise, and my sister says that he got that from Peppa Pig. So if anyone knows what that's all about, then comment on this YouTube video or tweet us at distractions_GRP, because I'd love to know more. All right. Well,
I've got a group chat with some of my friends who do have children, and they sent a link today from the Guardian in the UK, and it says U.S. parents say Peppa Pig is giving their kids British accents, and the Twitter account No Context Brit says The Empire Strikes Back.
yeah, it's the third, well, no, the 4th British invasion, because we had the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the British invasion of the 60s and 70s, Peppa Pig. I'm still mad about the first 3. Oh my God.
And we've got this fascination with the royals now too, which is just shout out to the Harry and Meghan documentary on Netflix. Though.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, speaking of royals, let's talk about Walt's original Magic Kingdom over there in Anaheim. So Disneyland is going to be debuting San Francisco, is how they're pronouncing it. San Francisco Square in 2023. It is from the movie, I had to look this up, Big Hero 6. And it's going to have iconic things such as the the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, as well as different cultural things from Japan. It's going to have different offerings and stuff like that. Andrew, are you a big Disney fan, or are you more of a coaster guy, or both?
I'm both. I will say, as Disney fandom goes, I'm not the world's biggest movie watcher. I think my favorite Disney film of all time is the 1994 cult classic Heavyweights. So I really mad they have never put that into a park, but I've never seen Big Hero 6, and I know this is a this is an area of the park. There's no attractions in Disney's California Adventure in the Pacific Wharf that they're retheming, and I think they're keeping the bakery tour, the Boudin, what Boudin Bakery, Boudin. I don't know
Yes.
how to pronounce that word. I guess you get free bread there, and everybody loves free bread. But I have no idea anything as it relates to Big Hero 6, to San Francisco, and I've only been to Disney's California Adventure one time, and I was kind of speed running it that day, just trying to hit my highlights and then get on the road. But I'm always here for plussing up areas, and even if we're tying literally everything in a theme park to IP these days, I know there is a definite subset of families and theme park fans who will really enjoy
Absolutely.
this
Don, do you have
area.
any thoughts on it?
I just think, as a guest, even if you haven't seen the movie or anything like that, I think it's kind of cool anytime you can be transported into the world of animation. So I'm looking forward to this.
I completely agree. And you're right. You don't have to have seen the movie. Case in point, I've never seen a Harry Potter movie, but I love Hogwarts and all that stuff at Universal. And I know the characters from the rides rather than from the movies. Moving on.
The Rock and Roll roller coaster, it's closed for rehab at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Thoughts on that, Ryan?
So, this has been rumored for quite a long time that they're going to do this. I don't think it's necessarily clear if Aerosmith is sticking around. Um, I think that if the ride were rethemed or redone, that really wouldn't hurt my soul as much as it would with any other ride at Disney, because I think that while the experience is cool and I know what they're trying to do, I think the ride is very lackluster, and I think that it's kind of just like a really nice version of any other launched indoor coaster. But with that being said, these things happen. They go through rehab. They probably replacing pieces of track and trains and fixing up scenery and all sorts of stuff like that. So um, I'm glad they're doing it. But if it became like a Star Wars or Guardians of the Galaxy or whatever, that wouldn't bother me at all. But I don't think that's necessarily the case.
I I I love this ride. I think it's a really good thrill ride, which Disney kind of lacks in that department. Obviously, Tower of Terror is right there, but at its core, this is a roller coaster now that is almost 25 years old. It runs daily. I mean, it probably needs a little bit of TLC, and that's always the constant rumor. Is the only rumor I feel like that's more constant for Hollywood Studios is they're going to build the Monsters Inc. door coaster, the suspended whatever it is. I mean, I feel like I've heard that for as long as I've been riding for Coaster 101 and probably years before that. My favorite rumor that I've seen with this, and I don't know if it's a rumor as much as it is wishful thinking by fans of nostalgia, would be to get rid of G-Force Records, get rid of Aerosmith, and put some Disney IP in this, and bring in Powerline from a Goofy movie. The two or the limos can play either eye to eye or stand out. There's a scene in there where Goofy does the perfect cast. I mean, I think the story writes itself. But that's armchair engineering at its finest, and I really have no idea what's happening. And I'm sure, really, when it opens later this summer, it's going to be the same thing. And they'll find a way to have reimagined or re-engineered the pre-show film, so Steven Tyler, you know, looks like Steven Tyler now. Maybe, I don't know. They deep fake it. I mean, the Disney exhibition at the Franklin Institute, they've deep faked Walt, so I feel like they could deep fake Aerosmith and have the same thing happen.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite rides. At Disney World. Love it. A lot of fun. But I'm also someone that if they do change it, I think you respect history. You talked about it being around for 25 years. People, that's all they know is that's always been there. So I think you always want to respect history, but you can't revere it. And sometimes you have to do the updates, and maybe that's going to happen here.
It's an original park attraction, just like Splash Mountain was an original park attraction. except it wasn't.
Yeah,
Anyway.
but Splash Mountain was accepted as an original park attraction. It very much wasn't, though. Yeah. So it looks like I'm outnumbered
Absolutely.
here. For me, it just didn't hit me in the feels. The ride was fine. I'm not saying it's uncomfortable or anything like that, and it's fun. But you kind of hit the nail on the head with my thought. It's right next door to Tower of Terror, which is the greatest
Naruto,
ride of all
yeah.
time. So when we're talking about a deeply immersive themed ride with cool elements and stuff, versus a well-themed indoor roller coaster, it's kind of hard to get excited about it. That's just the way that my brain works, though. But my brain does not work the same way as most people, according to most doctors. So, anyway, moving right along. What do we got next? Oh my gosh. So we're talking about Super Nintendo World again. So Don, of course, gave me this one because I'm obviously excited about it. But Super Nintendo World opened this past Friday, as of this recording, at Universal Studios Hollywood. So that marks the second location, first one being in Japan, I believe. But the CEO of Universal, Mark Woodbury, said what everybody was thinking, and he said, like, this is the worst kept secret in the theme park industry, but Super Nintendo World will be coming to Epic Universe. Epic Universe is scheduled to open in 2025, I believe. Yes. And then, so right now, they've got the Mario Kart ride, which I think is called like Bowser's Fury or something like, or the Bowser Challenge or whatever, which I've seen plenty of footage of. It looks completely awesome. I grew up playing these Nintendo games. Andrew, did you grow up playing Nintendo, or were you more of an outdoor kid? Because I was totally a fat kid playing Nintendo.
No, I was an outdoor kid, but I also played a lot of computer games. I mean, I think my first system was the Super Nintendo, and I have now the little mini like SNES
Yes.
Classic is what it's called, that has some of these Mario, and it's got Super Punch Out. And I haven't played it in a while, but that was the one thing that, this land opening made me want to kind of dig that out and play it for sure. Um, but yeah, I was definitely a Nintendo kid growing up, and then kind of pinged back and forth between Nintendo and PlayStation, then eventually Xbox. So I've hit most of the systems at this
Absolutely.
point.
Don, what are your thoughts on this? So, we kind of predicted this was coming to Epic Universe. We talked about this before. Now it's official. Chat me
Yeah, I
up.
mean, very excited about it. Especially after seeing some of the the photos and videos from the past weekend opening out in California. There, you get even more excited about it. Just how well themed and everything it is. So, yeah, I think it's going to be great. And you mentioned Epic Universe, Ryan. Uh, Looking at some videos and again some photos of that I've seen on social media, that has really come a long way since we were there in November.
Yeah, some sort of mock rides dueling coaster got topped off the other day, I guess. Do you know
Yeah,
anything about that,
yeah.
Andrew?
So
Are you following Epic Universe?
Um, I am following it from the camera lens in the helicopter of Bio Reconstruct on Twitter. The occasional looking at Orlando Park Stop, plugging
Right.
websites that aren't mine. Again, we're not the website who does these things. We just know where to find them. I'm following it. I'm excited. But I feel like, he said this was the worst kept secret, and I could have sworn when the first Nintendo Universal thing was coming, like back in 2016 or whenever. Yeah, this is November 2016. I'm looking at coaster101.com. It said Nintendo coming to 3 Universal parks in the coming years. And so they announced this in 2016, and I guess everybody forgot about it. But I guess that they've said it's coming to Universal or Epic Universe rather than, Universal Studios Florida, because I guess Kid Zone for the longest time was supposed to be the chopping block scapegoat for Nintendo until they decided to build that third/fourth gate, depending on how you define a theme
my
park.
understanding is that the original intention, maybe it was before Epic Universe was finalized, was that Super Nintendo World was going to go where the Woody Woodpecker stuff is. But then they changed it to the fourth gate, the third gate, I guess. Let's not include Volcano Bay since it's a wet park. But yeah, when you talk about a worst kept secret, they announced it.
Right. It's if it's coming to Universal Orlando Resort, there's only so many plots of land in the 2 existing dry parks where you could put this thing. There are lands that you could completely retheme and kind of gut, Kid Zone being one. Toon Lagoon being another. But I'm most excited for this this Donkey Kong
Yes.
coaster that we've yet to see at any of the parks. Kind of the boom coaster concept, which is another thing that I saw we were going to talk about this, and so I pulled up the article that Nick, my co-writer, wrote in 2017, right after they had the patent. And the first thing you see when you see this thing is this is going to be the Minecart Carnage level from Donkey Kong Country on Super Nintendo. And I'm so excited to kind of see how this works in practice. I know, the sideways track has a little bit of a resemblance in the patent to like the new Fireball up at Adventureland in Long Island. It kind of has that sideways track where you've got a vertical ride vehicle. In Fireball's case, it's coming out of it, but in the Donkey Kong, it's going to be above the track. But I can't wait for this thing to open. It's going to be years before I'll be able to ride it because that's how wait times at these Orlando parks work. I don't know if I'll ever be able to ride Tron or Guardians or anything anytime soon, just because A, I'm not down there, and B, I've yet to figure out boarding passes and reservations and how these things, Genie Plus and Genie Double Plus, Super Plus, whatever it's called, Lightning Lane.
All part of the experience.
Yeah. Confusion is now part of the experience. Yeah. So I think I remember reading an article about a patent where they're going to have the cart from the perspective of the people on the midway. There's going to be a broken section of track, and the cart's going to jump it. Did you read something about that?
Yep.
That's so cool. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, very excited about it. As I discussed with Don, growing up, I was a Nintendo kid. Super Mario Brothers 3 was my favorite. I've got a Switch now. I just bought it like 3 weeks ago, and I've been killing it. Cool. Awesome. Moving on. Number 6.
The final pick 6 is Wild Adventures, located in Georgia. They've announced a concert series for 2023. They've got, I think, Rio Diamond, Styx, REO Speedwagon. Andrew, what are your thoughts when concerts and parks come together as one here?
It's really funny that you guys brought this up as a topic because John, the guy who runs our site, he was down at Six Flags Over Texas last weekend, and he was up in their Sky Tower Observation, Oriole Derrick, whatever I believe that park calls it. I don't know. And he's, took a picture of what I believe to be the old Batman Stadium or some amphitheater that's in the park. And it's like, why do so many of these parks have these amphitheaters that never get used? And, it turns into a big debate on Ticketmaster monopolizing entertainment and big acts going to arenas and amphitheaters in the vicinity. Charlotte, for example, has the Palladium, has only hosted, I believe, one concert in my time of covering the park in the past decade. So I think it's really cool when parks do these. I know Disney does their, Eat to the Beat concert series during Food and Wine or Flower and Garden or one of their festivals. They do it. Obviously, SeaWorld with their food festival, they've got some concerts. Universal during Mardi Gras, they do it. But to see a smaller park kind of have these acts, and I'm not going to, by any means, this is not being fair to the acts who I know are tuning into this podcast. I wouldn't call them A-list acts at this point in time. Styx, obviously big name. T.I., I would be very excited to see T.I. perform. The Beach Boys, REO Speedwagon, who were just at SeaWorld the other weekend. Larry the Cable Guy, also very funny. So they've got a really, really unique and eclectic mix here. And I'm seeing Bare Naked Ladies coming to the park in July. And, they're Universal Mardi Gras regulars and whenever Universal does concerts. So I love when parks do this. Again, Wild Adventures is not a park I've ever been to. I can't say that a T.I. or a Bare Naked Ladies concert is going to get me there quicker than a roller coaster would. But it's something for their guests to enjoy, and these all appear to be included, with a season pass or a park ticket or things like that. And, I will say, just because the artist isn't big right now, I work for a company and we put on a lot of concerts associated with motorsports. I think I can say that at this point. Last year we produced a concert for Flo Rida at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. He performed at their like kind of the Speed Street Festival, and you go into it and you're like, Flo Rida, he doesn't really have a ton of songs, but then he plays every song he's been on and been featured on that aren't necessarily his discography, and that was a heck of a show. So I think Ti, he's going to kill it. Bare Naked Ladies, they have a ton of hits, even if they just play the Big Bang Theory theme song and 1 week and call it a day. I think that's a very solid show in and of itself. And then, who doesn't love the song Mr. Roboto? And then you also have Come Sail Away. So these are going to be fun concerts at Wild Adventures, and I'm really glad that there is a park that is not Disney, Universal, or SeaWorld who is able to bring kind of these bigger acts. Busch Gardens is another park that will, they'll bring the acts from time to time. But, for a smaller regional, Hershey Park to kind of have these acts and these level of name recognition acts. And I mean, it's not just, local talent, basically. It is a list of name brand acts who aren't necessarily bonded to a Ticketmaster or Live Nation venue. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and Andrew, for what it's worth, Wild Adventures has one of the finest outdoor concert venues in southern Georgia.
I'm betting it might be one of the only fine outdoor concert venues in southern Georgia, but point made.
Excellent. Yep. Theme parks and concerts. It's circling back around, Awesome. Well, so Andrew, do you have any final thoughts? Any words of wisdom coming from Coaster 101?
Don't leak blueprints and ruin the efforts of marketing.
Didn't think you were going that direction with it, but
sorry. No, I'm happy to have you guys on. The one question that I'm not going to ask the question for myself. I was really excited to kind of talk about my, favorite coasters and favorite flat rides and things like that. But maybe that can be like the next time.
Yeah, we could do that. We were, Don and I always have a contingency plan, and it's like, okay, if this goes shorter, if it drags, then we'll pull that out. And it didn't. You had plenty of really good insight, and I think that a lot of people, because there's so many people involved in fan sites and Facebook groups and stuff like that, YouTube channels that can really heed your advice, first of all, and secondly, empathize with what you're saying. So you had a lot of really good information, so I appreciate it. Don,
absolutely.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Thank you guys
Don,
for having me.
What are your final thoughts for the day?
A lot of good insights, I think, provided by Andrew in terms of, I would say the right way to run a fan site and, just the way they go about cultivating relationships. I really appreciate the insights.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Once again, we can be found in your favorite podcast apps or on YouTube. So if you're listening to one or watching one, then you can find us on the other if you want to. Twitter at attractions_GRP. Link for buy us a coffee to support the podcast in the description. Also, we'll have Andrew's website, social media, and so on in the description of both the YouTube and the podcast app. So give them a look. He has some fantastic content. That's coaster101.com. So thank you, everybody, for listening and sticking with us till the end. And we will see you next week.